He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they was dismayed at his presence. Now, do not be grieved, this is Joseph, or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. Joseph helped them see that in the context of them treating him wrong, God was up to something. He was using their mistreatment of him to launch Joseph into get toward the destiny that God had already set out for him. This was a launching pad, as a matter of fact, for Joseph to move toward his divine destiny. Now watch this. Nevertheless, Joseph's love and kindness did not absolve them, nor let them off the hook for the things that they needed to ask forgiveness for the personal wrong that they did to Joseph. Y'all follow me? Although Joseph was all right and he understood that God was behind the scenes getting me to where I need to, that did not negate the fact that these brothers owed Joseph an apology. And you know, they were nervous at this point because of a guilty conscience. You know, when you have a guilty conscience, you live life paranoid. You know, when people are guilty of something, you don't know when the reckoning day is coming. Somebody knock on your door. Oh, Lord, who could that be? Tax time is coming up. And you done did some things that you might not get your taxes back. And y'all calling that number, where my taxes, you know, press 1 to locate where, you know, where your taxes is, where's the tracking number. But people who have a guilty conscience, they live in paranoia. Let me show you what I mean. Proverbs highlights this truth. Look at Proverbs 28 verse 1. It says the wicked flee when ain't nobody chasing them. The wicked flee when nobody is pursuing. When you're paranoid and you're guilty, you're thinking somebody is going to break out somewhere and do something to you because you have a guilty conscience. You know, when we have the most guilty conscience is when a police car on the highway is in another lane coming up. If you ain't got your seatbelt on, you talking on your cell phone, and you're speeding, sort of like your passing through at times, I'll admit. When you see a police car come by, you see it in the rearview mirror, buckle up, put your cell phone down, you slow down. Especially y'all who got unpaid tickets. Y'all ever had that feeling you ain't paid your tickets? Here come a police with the lights and the sirens, and you thinking they're coming after you like, oh, Jesus, please. Oh, God, please. And they done gone past you to get somebody else. You're like, oh, Lord, thank you. Awakened conscience. What if he pays us back, Joseph's brother said. What if he pays us back for all the wrong which we did to him? You know, a guilty conscience can create all sorts of hypothetical fears. What if this comes back on me somehow? Especially when the truth would ruin one's reputation or your future. How is your conscience doing this morning? Does this text awaken something in some of you that you've never made right with somebody? Or does it awaken your conscience to something somebody did to you and they never made it right? Y'all look like y'all got awakened consciences this morning because of this text. Have you buried a sin against someone? Or something you did had a negative impact on somebody else and it changed their life forever, but you never brought it up, you never discussed it, and you never made it right. Where have you hid the body? How did you rewrite the story so that others won't find out that it was you? How have you covered your tracks so that the evidence doesn't point back to you? How many items do you have on your I'm going to take this to the grave list? Why have you been silent about it for so long? But then God sends a reminder and your conscience is reawakened. If your conscience is reawakened, you know what that says? You never took care of it. And so when you hear the sirens and see the lights, you go into panic because you think this time God is going to pull you over for the damage you've done to somebody else. Joseph's brothers' hypothetical fears, they moved them to finally deal with what they had done to him in order to cleanse their conscience, to spare themselves of imagined punishment. Y'all got to realize now who they dealing with. This ain't the 17-year-old boy that they threw in a hole. This is not the 17-year-old teenager that they sold off in slavery. This is Joseph, over 40 years old, second in command to Pharaoh. He's got the gallows at his disposal, and he can kill off anybody he desires to. That's why they were in a panic, because a ruler at their disposal, they had capital punishment, and they can give it to the innocent as well as to the guilty. And these brothers was afraid now. Jacob is no longer here as a buffer between us and what our brother could do to us. And so they wanted to spare themselves of punishment. Next, we see a confessional advocate appears. Verses 16 through 18. Now, they're supposing that a reckoning day is going to eventually happen between them and Joseph after Jacob's death. Saints, they had already spoken to their dad about the issue and what they should do in order to handle Joseph as a powerful person who may feel differently about them after Jacob is gone. So the first thing they do is a confession by proxy. Proxy means somebody else standing in your stead. In verse 16, it says this in the first part. So they sent a message to Joseph. So the brothers, they sent a servant to speak to Joseph on their behalf by appealing to him based on what their father Jacob wanted Joseph to do when the matter came up. They already knew the matter was going to come up, so they had already spoken to their dad about it. And although the prior narratives don't mention it, saints, apparently at some point, the brothers did sit their dad down and tell them the full story while they were living in Goshen as to what they did to their brother. They even expressed with fear and trepidation, what if Joseph goes there with us? Dad, how shall we handle it? Well, Jacob, by proxy, becoming their advocate, he says, you send the following message to Joseph. Look at what the text says as we continue. Saying, your father charged before he died, saying, thus shall you say to Joseph, please forgive, I beg you, the transgression of your brothers and their sin. So Joseph sent this servant to say what Jacob told them to say to him. He appealed to Joseph to do two things. Forgive their transgression, how they crossed the line. To transgress means to cross the line. How they crossed the line and they hurt you, but also forgive their sin, which is committed against the Lord by what they did. Then he just sums it up. Listen to this. Forgive them, for they did you wrong. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father. So here it is. Jacob reminds Joseph, forgive them in the name of being the people of God and part of the covenant family. We're family. You've got to forgive your brothers. They are part of the covenant promise that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And since we're in the same family, you can't do them harm because they are God's people. Look at Joseph's response. Wow. And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. This is the seventh time in Scripture we see Joseph breaks down and he cries. I believe in this context he cried for three reasons. One, he cried because they finally asked for forgiveness and they closed the gap of admitting the wrong that they've done. Somebody ever did something to you and they never apologized, and then all of a sudden they wake up and then they want to call you or get with you, and you've been carrying that hurt for years. You've been dealing with that pain and they've never admitted, and when they sit you down they say, you know what, I just want to let you know what I did to you was wrong, how I acted, what I said, how I maneuvered around you, and how I tainted your reputation.